I will never forget the day that I received a phone call informing me that I had been selected to become a MEDEVAC pilot in the Army. It was a routine day. I was a lieutenant at the time at my first duty station in Fort Sill, where I was a battalion medical officer, also known as a battalion meadow, for a field artillery battalion. On this particular day, we had what was called a command and staff meeting. And I was actually getting ready to enter the conference room whenever I received a phone call from Army Human Resource Command. So, obviously an important phone call, so I answered it. On the other line was a lieutenant colonel, and she informed me that I had been selected to become a MEDEVAC pilot. Needless to say, I was overjoyed. My career up until that point was pretty dull and boring and uneventful. As I entered the conference room, and when it got to my portion in the brief, to brief the battalion commander, I opened up with the fact that I had just been selected to be a MEDEVAC pilot. And I think everybody in that room knew that my career was about to get very exciting. However, no one could prepare me for the phone call I'd receive just 3 weeks later. If you're new to the channel, I am Devin Rushing. I am currently a MEDEVAC pilot in the U.S. Army, and I cover all things aviation, mainly focused on Army aviation. So if you like that type of content, please give us a like and subscribe. This video is going to be a little different. I'm going to dive in a little bit in my personal journey, and I'm going to try to give you guys what to expect if you are thinking about taking this road. So since we're talking about the route I took, we're going to zero in on the 67J, which is my MOS, a 67 Juliet, also known as an aeromedical evacuation officer. So I only do MEDEVAC. That's what I do. So if that's the route you want to take, you're going to have to go to a 4-year university and enroll either in ROTC or go to a military academy like West Point. And then, boom, you go through 4 years of school, and then you want to branch Medical Service Corps. You can branch Aviation, but if you specifically want to specialize in MEDEVAC, you have to branch Medical Service Corps, 67J. Now, when you branch Medical Service Corps, you will be a 70 Bravo, which at the beginning of this video is what I was before I became a 67J. To become a 67J, it is a separate selection process and requires a packet that you submit to a board that convenes once a year. So let's talk about the packet. Alright, for your packet, you're going to do this in 5 easy steps. Step 1 is take the SIF test. You want to score over a 40, preferably around a 50. If you can, obviously the higher the better, but that's step 1, is take the SIF test. And that's for any pilot, whether you're going warrant, whether you're going basic aviation, or you want to be a 67J MEDEVAC pilot. Step 2, you're going to get your Class 1 flight physical. This can be completed at just about any base, but the doctor that completes this has to be a board certified flight doc. So, Class 1 flight physical, step 2. Step 3 is your OERs or your college transcripts. Now, if you're like me and you didn't apply till later on, and you're a 70 Bravo and you're like, I want to go 67J, you're going to submit any OERs that you've had. If you don't have any OERs and you're applying right out of college, you're going to submit your college transcripts, and that's kind of like the placeholder for OERs. Now, the 4th step is your letter of intent. Your letter of intent is just a letter from you to the board that explains how passionate you are about being a MEDEVAC pilot and why they should select you. And then your 5th and final step is your letters of recommendation. I have 2 tips for you guys for letters of recommendation. Number 1, you want a letter of recommendation for your senior rater or your professor of military science. That is somebody who knows you, who's seen your work ethic and everything, and when the board reads that letter of recommendation, they're going to be like, oh, this is somebody who clearly knows him or her and can speak to their work ethic and why we should select them. The second person that you are going to try to get is a senior 67J. I would recommend trying to get a major or higher. The reason why is because 67Js command as majors, so preferably somebody that's currently in command or post-command, or if you can, try to get a Lieutenant Colonel 67J or a Full-Bird Colonel 67J. And those are two recommendations that I'd highly seek after if you're currently working on your packet. The third one, just try to get either a senior pilot or another 67J or somebody within your command. But the two that I mentioned, your senior raider and a senior 67J, are the most important if you can. If you can't, no big deal. Those are just preferred. After that, you will submit your packet, and it's a waiting game from there. And hopefully everything goes right, and then congratulations, you're off to flight school. Now, you remember in the beginning of this video whenever I said after I got selected to become a medevac pilot, I would later get a phone call that no one could prepare me for? Well, we're about to get into that a little bit. So shortly after I got selected, there was something really bothering me that I needed to go to the doctor for. And those of you who know me know that I never go to the doctor. Luckily, I've been blessed with really good health, but on this particular day, I knew I needed to go to the doctor because something had been bothering me weeks leading up to this. So I go to the doctor, they run a whole bunch of tests, and I'm getting ready to leave the hospital, and before I even get out of the parking lot, I get a phone call, and it's from my doctor, and he's like, "Hey, I need you to come back to my office. I have to tell you something." So I'm like, "Okay." Pull back in, and as I'm walking in the hospital, I'm like, dude, this isn't good. Like, why would he need me to come back in? Like, this is bad news. I get there, and he informs me that I've been diagnosed with cancer, and I obviously was just devastated by that news alone, but my immediate question was like, okay, like, what does this mean as far as flight school goes? And he's like, hey, we got to talk to the flight doc, but I'm pretty sure they're going to pull your flight physical, and you're probably never going to become a pilot. And I mean, doctors don't get paid to give you good news. They get paid to give you the truth. And he was just doing his job. But I was devastated by, one, I had cancer, but two, that I'm not going to become a pilot anymore. And after talking to the flight doc, of course, they did whatever they could, but Fort Novacell was like, look, he's going to require at least 2 years of surveillance, and assuming there's no reoccurrence, he can then reapply for a waiver, and then, you know, the potential still exists for him to become a pilot. So here I was faced with this new information, like, boom, you got cancer, you got to deal with that immediately. Obviously, that's the 50-meter target here. But two, like, you're going to have to go through 2 years of CT scan and labs to make sure there's no reoccurrence to even give you a shot at being a pilot. And I was like, okay, well, like, that's what I have to do. This sucks. So over the next 2 years, I'd go to an assignment that I hated because it wasn't ultimately what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a medevac pilot. That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I got selected to do, but here I was in this staff role doing a job that I wasn't passionate about. And I even remember talking to, like, coworkers and my boss and everything, like, whenever I first got there. I'm like, hey, I got selected to be a 67J. I'm here to ride it out, get my surveillance done, and go to flight school. And I could even tell, like, whenever I would tell people this, they'd be like, yeah, okay, sure. Like, hey, your report's due next week. It was like one of those things. And, you know, not to go into too much detail just because this could be a video all on its own. I finally reached my 2-year mark where I had no reoccurrence or anything. My surveillance went good, thank God. And it got time for me to get my flight physical. So I called up the local flight surgeon there and asked for it, and that local flight surgeon wouldn't even give it to me once he knew my medical history with the cancer. So luckily I held on to some email traffic that when this episode first kicked off that I kept, which was from the Aero Medical Review Board from Fort Novacell. I got into contact with them, and they linked me up with a flight surgeon who was willing to see me. Long story short, I went and got my flight physical. They typed up the recommendation for waiver. It went to Fort Novacell, and boom, I got selected. And that was obviously the best news in the world, because I was going to go to flight school and I was going to pursue my dreams up until that point. And I think waiting that 2 years even made it better, because like I'd been hanging on to this thought forever, and it was finally coming true. And, you know, I think whenever I walked into my office and told my coworkers, like, hey, I just came on orders for flight school, I think they were like, almost like whenever I told them, like, I kind of got the sense of disbelief, but like showing them my order, they were like, dude, this guy really did get selected to be a pilot. Like, damn, like he wasn't bullshitting us. So I went to flight school, and I am currently at a unit, and I've been flying for 2 years now. So it was a story with a happy ending, fortunately. Now in this video, I do want to touch on some things not often talked about in aviation. So I think when people are applying to become pilots, specifically 67Js, you think, oh, I'm going to go to a unit and all I'm going to do is fly Monday through Friday. That's all I'm ever going to do. It's going to be great. And I really wish that was the case. Best case scenario, day-to-day operations, you're probably going to fly maybe once or twice a week. There are certain circumstances where you might fly way more than that, like at NTC, or if you're on deployment. There's been weeks where I've flown every single day, which is a great thing, but that's not normal. Normally, when you're back at your home duty station, day-to-day operations, as a officer, you're going to spend a lot of time doing other things. So the first thing you're going to find yourself doing as a commissioned officer at an aviation unit is managing property. A lot of our time goes to managing property. And what does that mean? So that's everything the company actually owns. So not just aircraft, also ground vehicles. Yes, aviation units own ground vehicles, and you're going to be responsible for managing a certain number of those ground vehicles. Weapon systems, tents, generators, camo nets, communications equipment. There's something called a cyclic inventory and an SI inventory that comes out every single month. And whatever is on that list, you have to take out, and you have to get accountability of that. And what accountability looks like is literally pulling out the item and everything that goes with that item, inventorying it, making sure that you have it, making sure it's not missing or broken, and ordering any shortages you have, and just getting accountability of that. The Army is very big on accountability of equipment. I know it might not seem like that from the news, but unfortunately at the company level, they're very big on accountability. So you're going to spend a lot of time doing that. The other thing is, as an officer, it's very administrative heavy. So writing evaluations for people that fall in your platoon, writing awards for maybe training events that you went to, and making sure people get recognized for certain things, whether that's an Army Achievement Medal or an Army Commendation Medal. You're going to have soldier issues that come up, whether that's disciplinary issues or you're just helping somebody get paperwork through finance because no one's answering this poor private's phone call when they call to try to get their pay figured out. So you might, as an officer, have to step in and make sure that person does their job. Waking up for PT. So I know this varies unit to unit. Unfortunately, my unit's going through a period where we do PT Monday through Friday. And in an aviation unit, typically you have a group of people who are pretty self-motivated to work out on their own, but the Army loves to do group PT. So what that looks like is going for a run with your platoon in the morning, or doing some type of circuit workout or whatever. Sometimes you might get in a unit where they don't care, they're just wanting you to take your Army Combat Fitness test, and as long as you score good, you're good to go. But some units don't look at it that way. And then you have training events. So if you're not deployed or you're not deploying, you're training up for a deployment. So that looks like field exercises, actually going out to the field with your helicopters and your vehicles and your commo equipment and setting up your command posts and making sure all of those systems work. That way, if you do get called up for a deployment, your readiness is where it needs to be in order to go operate the way the Army expects you to operate. So those are some of the things that aren't often talked about. We like to focus on all of the cool highlight stuff that, like, where, you know, a helicopter's flying in and doing this amazing dust landing and saving casualties and everything like that, which that is a big part of the job, but there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that doesn't often get talked about. So that is some things that you can look forward to. So I know this video was a little different. I hope you took something away from it. I know a lot of my viewers are aspiring pilots getting ready to prepare themselves to go to flight school or preparing to submit a packet. So I hope I gave you guys a lot of good information that you can take and help prepare for that. If you have any comments or questions, just leave comments in the comment section, and I love responding to them. That's a great way for me to interact with you guys and see where you're at in the process. And if you like this video or if you took anything away from it, please give us a like, and if you like this content, please subscribe. Thanks, guys.